She had the money, she had the qualifications, but somehow the house was always unavailable. At first, she thought it was just bad luck, until she uncovered the ugly truth. What happens when one woman refuses to back down against a billion-dollar real estate empire? Stay with us, because this is a fight they never saw coming. Before we dive in, let us know, what time are you listening to this, and where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Naomi Carter stood in the doorway of her modest yet tastefully furnished apartment in Los Angeles, staring out at the early morning cityscape. The golden light bathed the skyline, casting long shadows on the quiet streets below. It was a rare moment of stillness in a life that had been anything but. For over 25 years, Naomi had dedicated herself to the airline industry, climbing the ranks from a young flight attendant to an esteemed senior crew leader. She had traveled across the world, witnessed breathtaking landscapes from thousands of feet in the air, and served everyone from business magnates to nervous first-time flyers. But through it all, she had always felt a quiet yearning for something more stable, something she could call her own. She sipped from her ceramic coffee mug, the warmth settling in her hands as she reflected on the years that had led her here. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, she had been raised with the belief that hard work and perseverance would pave the way to success, and in many ways they had. But even now in her 50s, standing at the precipice of what should have been a time of well-earned comfort, Naomi felt an all-too-familiar doubt creeping in. A sharp knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She turned, setting her mug down before opening it to find Sam Whitaker, grinning at her. "Morning, superstar," he greeted, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "I hope you're ready because today's a big day." Sam was more than just an old friend. He was a former pilot, someone who had spent years navigating the same skies as Naomi before an injury forced him into early retirement. Now he had reinvented himself as a financial advisor, using his expertise to help former colleagues transition into life beyond the airline industry. Naomi exhaled a small chuckle. "Big day, huh? Sounds serious." "It is," Sam said, his voice carrying an edge of enthusiasm. "I found the perfect place for you, a beachfront estate in Malibu. Great location, quiet neighborhood, and best of all, it's exactly what you've been talking about." She arched an eyebrow, skeptical. "I don't know, Sam. Malibu? You've worked hard for this, Naomi. You deserve a home that reflects that." She knew he was right. She had spent years saving, investing wisely, and planning for this next phase of her life. The idea of owning a home, something solid, something permanent, wasn't just a dream anymore. It was within reach, and yet something held her back. "Places like that," she hesitated, "they're not exactly welcoming to people like me." Sam's expression softened. He understood. He had seen firsthand the unspoken barriers that still existed, the way people made silent judgments based on appearances before even looking at the numbers. "I won't lie to you," he admitted. "You might run into some resistance, but if anyone deserves to be there, it's you. And besides, it's not about them. It's about what you want." Naomi sat down at the kitchen table, running a hand through her short, neatly styled hair. She was tired of constantly having to prove herself, tired of feeling like she had to fight for a seat at the table. But she also knew she wasn't someone who backed down easily. Taking a deep breath, she looked up at Sam and nodded. "All right," she said, "let's do this." Sam grinned, pulling his phone from his pocket. "That's what I like to hear. I'll set up the meeting with Ellsworth Realty. We'll check it out tomorrow." Naomi picked up her coffee again, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. The decision had been made. She just wasn't sure if she was ready for the fight that might come with it. The next morning, Naomi pulled into the parking lot of Ellsworth Realty's Malibu office. The building, sleek and modern, stood just a block from the coastline, its glass windows reflecting the deep blue of the Pacific. She stepped out of her car, adjusting her blazer as she took in the sight of the luxury cars parked neatly in a row. A silent reminder of the clientele this place was used to serving. Sam was already waiting by the entrance, leaning against one of the white stone pillars. He gave her a quick nod as she approached. "Ready for this?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," she replied, squaring her shoulders before stepping inside. The interior of Ellsworth Realty was exactly what she had expected. Polished marble floors, tastefully arranged artwork, and the faint scent of expensive cologne lingering in the air. A handful of agents stood near the reception desk, deep in conversation with well-dressed clients who looked as if they had never known a day of financial worry. As Naomi and Sam approached the front desk, a young receptionist greeted them with a professional but neutral expression. "Good morning," she said. "How can I help you?" Sam took the lead. "We have an appointment to view a property. Naomi Carter." The receptionist's gaze flickered toward Naomi briefly before she nodded. "One moment, please." She turned to the side and picked up the phone, speaking in hushed tones. Naomi took in her surroundings, resisting the urge to let her unease show. She had walked into plenty of high-end establishments before, but there was always a moment, just a fraction of a second, when people took an extra beat to assess her, as if trying to place her. A door at the far end of the office swung open, and a tall man in a navy suit strode toward them. His blonde hair was neatly combed back, and his confident smile was the kind that had likely closed millions of dollars in deals. "Ms. Carter," he said, offering his hand. "Ethan Blake. I'll be handling your showing today." His handshake was firm but fleeting. The moment Naomi introduced herself, she saw it. The slight shift in his expression. It wasn't overt. Just a small flicker in his eyes, a microsecond of hesitation before his polished demeanor snapped back into place. She had seen that look before. "Welcome to Ellsworth Realty," Ethan continued, gesturing for them to follow. "I understand you're interested in a property in our Malibu Shores development?" "That's right," Naomi said, keeping her tone neutral. Ethan led them past a row of glass-walled offices toward a large conference room. Malibu Shores is one of our most exclusive communities. The properties there range from 6 to 12 million, and they're in high demand. We typically work with clients who have established financial portfolios and extensive real estate experience. Naomi recognized the veiled implication immediately. She exchanged a glance with Sam, who remained silent but alert. "I see," she said. "Well, I've reviewed the listing, and I'd like to move forward with a showing." Ethan's smile remained in place, but she could tell he was searching for the right way to steer the conversation elsewhere. "Of course," he said. "But before we proceed, may I ask about your financing plans? Are you pre-approved for a loan, or will this be a cash purchase?" It was an odd question to ask before even presenting the property. Naomi knew it. So did Sam. "My financials are in order," she said coolly. "I assume that won't be an issue." "Of course not," Ethan said, but his tone had lost its earlier enthusiasm. "We just like to ensure our clients are well-positioned for a smooth transaction." Sam finally spoke. "I don't remember being asked this many questions the last time I referred a client here." Ethan chuckled, though there was no warmth in it. "Just covering all bases, Mr. Whitaker." Naomi folded her arms. "So, are we seeing the house or not?" Ethan hesitated, then gave a tight smile. "I'll make a call to confirm availability. If you'd like, we can discuss some alternative listings that may be a better fit in the meantime." There it was. Naomi didn't let her expression change, but inside something sharpened. She had expected some resistance. She just hadn't expected it to come this quickly. "I think I'll wait for confirmation," she said. Ethan nodded, though the pleasant mask he wore had started to crack just a little. "Of course," he said. "I'll be right back." As he stepped out of the room, Sam let out a low breath, shaking his head. "You see what he's doing, right?" he muttered. Naomi kept her gaze steady. "Oh, I see it," she said. "And I'm not going anywhere." Naomi sat in the conference room, her fingers lightly drumming against the smooth wooden table. The air conditioning hummed softly in the background, but there was an undeniable tension in the room. Across from her, Sam leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable as he scrolled through his phone. "He's stalling," he muttered, not bothering to look up. Naomi knew he was right. Ethan hadn't even tried to hide it. Instead of immediately arranging the showing, he had stepped out of the room with the vague promise of confirming availability. She had been in enough negotiations over the years to recognize a deliberate delay when she saw one. She glanced toward the frosted glass window that separated the conference room from the main office. Shadows of passing figures blurred as employees moved through their workday, unconcerned with the quiet battle taking place behind closed doors. Naomi took a deep breath. This wasn't new to her. She had spent years proving herself in spaces where she was underestimated. On flights where passengers assumed she was just another flight attendant rather than a seasoned crew leader, In executive meetings where male colleagues overlooked her expertise until she corrected their mistakes. She had spent a lifetime navigating these moments, but that didn't mean she was willing to tolerate them. After another few minutes, the door finally opened and Ethan returned, his expression composed but his energy slightly off, like a man who had hoped for a different outcome than the one he was about to deliver. "Well," he said, offering a polite, closed-lip smile, "it turns out the property has already received significant interest from another buyer. The seller is currently reviewing offers." Naomi arched an eyebrow. "That's interesting. I checked the listing this morning. It didn't say anything about pending offers." Ethan's smile didn't waver. "Things move quickly in this market." Sam let out a quiet scoff, but Naomi remained still, watching Ethan closely. She could feel the moment stretching, an unspoken challenge lingering between them. "All right," she said smoothly. "Then I'd like to submit an offer." Ethan blinked just for a second. "Of course," he recovered quickly. "But given the level of interest, the seller is prioritizing well-qualified buyers, cash offers in particular." Naomi didn't flinch. "I can pay in cash." That did it. For the first time since she had arrived, Ethan's confident exterior cracked. It was slight, just a flicker of surprise before he masked it, but Naomi saw it. "I see," he said. "That's certainly a strong position to be in." She tilted her head, keeping her tone pleasant. "Is there any other reason I wouldn't be able to make an offer on this home?" Ethan hesitated, clearly recalibrating. "No, of course not. I just want to make sure it's the right fit for you." Sam finally spoke, his voice edged with amusement. "I think Naomi can decide that for herself." Ethan let out a short, polite chuckle, but Naomi could tell he was already regretting taking this meeting. He had assumed she was out of place here. He had expected her to walk away, but she wasn't leaving. "All right," Ethan said finally, shifting gears. "I'll get the paperwork started for your offer. If you'd like, we can also explore some other options in case this one doesn't go through." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "Let's focus on this one first." Ethan nodded, but his eyes flickered with something Naomi recognized well: discomfort. He wasn't used to people like her standing their ground in places like this, and that was exactly why she wasn't backing down. As Ethan excused himself to prepare the documents, Naomi exhaled slowly, turning to Sam. "Still think this is a good idea?" she asked, half joking. Sam smirked. "I think you're about to make it a great one." Naomi watched as Ethan disappeared through the glass doors, his pace just a little too brisk to be casual. The tension in the air lingered even after he left, thick and unspoken, like a battle neither side had openly acknowledged, but both knew was happening. Sam tapped a rhythm against the table with his fingers, shaking his head with a knowing smile. That man is trying everything he can to shut this deal down without saying it out loud. Naomi sighed, resting her hands on the cool wood. "I've seen it before, Sam. They act like the house is in high demand or that there are pending offers, but really they just don't want certain people in certain neighborhoods." Sam nodded. "Yeah, but what they don't realize is that you don't scare easy." Naomi smirked but didn't respond. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the window, watching the ocean in the distance. It was one of the things that had drawn her to this house in the first place. She had spent years in the sky, always on the move, never fully settled. A place like this, solid, still, permanent, felt like more than just a home. It felt like a statement. A quiet knock on the door pulled her back to the present. The receptionist from earlier poked her head in, her expression polite but hesitant. "Miss Carter?" Naomi straightened. "Yes?" "Mr. Blake asked me to let you know that there's been a slight delay with the paperwork, but he'll be back shortly." Naomi met Sam's gaze before looking back at the receptionist. "Did he say what the delay was?" The woman hesitated. "He just mentioned needing to double-check some things with the seller." Sam let out a low chuckle. "Right, because that wasn't planned at all." Naomi exhaled slowly and nodded. "Thank you for letting me know." The receptionist gave a tight smile before stepping out, leaving the door slightly ajar. Naomi turned back to Sam. "This is going to be a fight, isn't it?" Sam shrugged. "Seems like it. But you knew that walking in." She did, and she wasn't going anywhere. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Naomi checked her watch, her patience thinning with every passing second. She could hear muffled voices beyond the glass walls, but no sign of Ethan returning. Finally, she had enough. "I'm done waiting," she muttered, standing up. Sam smirked, clearly amused. "Figured you'd say that." Naomi stepped out of the conference room, her heels clicking against the polished marble as she walked toward the main office. A few employees glanced up from their desks as she passed, but she ignored them, eyes locked on Ethan's office door. She didn't bother knocking. Ethan was inside, his phone pressed to his ear. But when he saw Naomi step in, his expression flickered with something between surprise and irritation. "I'll call you back," he muttered into the receiver before hanging up. He straightened in his chair, smoothing his tie as if preparing for battle. "Ms. Carter," he said with a practiced smile, "I was just about to come get you." "Funny," Naomi said, crossing her arms. "I got tired of waiting." Ethan exhaled through his nose, then gestured for her to sit. "Look, I won't waste your time. There have been some complications with the seller." Naomi arched a brow. "Complications?" Ethan hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "They've expressed some concerns about the buyer pool. They're looking for a certain type of client." There it was. He had finally said it. Naomi didn't blink. "A certain type?" Ethan shifted. "It's not about you personally, of course. They're just cautious about the neighborhood's atmosphere." Naomi leaned forward slightly. "You mean they don't want someone like me living there?" Ethan opened his mouth, but for once he didn't have a polished response. Naomi took a slow breath, keeping her voice calm. "Let's be very clear about something, Mr. Blake. I am more than qualified to purchase this property. I have the finances, the background, and the experience to navigate this market. And unless there is a written policy that disqualifies me, this conversation is over." Ethan exhaled, rubbing his temple. "Naomi, Ms. Carter," she corrected, standing up. "Get the paperwork ready. I'm submitting my offer." She turned on her heel and walked out, leaving Ethan sitting there, stunned. Sam was waiting for her outside the office, his arms crossed. "So how'd that go?" Naomi smirked. "He's running out of excuses." Sam chuckled. "Then let's make sure he doesn't find any more." Naomi sat in the driver's seat of her car, staring out at the waves rolling onto the Malibu shoreline. The sky had started to darken, the soft hues of twilight settling over the water. She had left Ellsworth Realty with the satisfaction of knowing she had backed Ethan Blake into a corner, but she also knew this wasn't over. She reached for her phone and dialed Sam. He picked up after the first ring. "Tell me you're not still sitting in their parking lot," he said. Naomi smirked. "Not quite. I'm by the beach." "That's slightly better," Sam said. "I assume you're not calling just to chat." "No," Naomi admitted. "I wanted to hear your take on all of this." There was a brief pause before Sam sighed. "Ethan's playing a dirty game, but you already knew that. The problem is, I don't think he's done pulling strings. You heard what he said, concerns about the buyer pool? That wasn't just a slip. That means he's either stalling to push a different buyer through, or he's got someone else making things harder for you behind the scenes." Naomi leaned back in her seat, tapping her fingers against the steering wheel. "So what do you think my next move should be?" Sam didn't hesitate. "Push forward, submit the offer, make it legally binding so they have to take you seriously." Naomi nodded to herself. "All right. First thing tomorrow, we make it official." The next morning, Naomi arrived at Ellsworth Realty earlier than expected. The office had only just opened, and the morning sun cast long, golden streaks across the glass windows. She stepped inside with confidence, ready for whatever Ethan had planned next. But it wasn't Ethan who greeted her this time. A woman stood at the reception desk, her neatly pressed suit giving her a polished, professional air. She looked up and smiled. "Ms. Carter?" Naomi nodded. "Yes. I'm Allison Grayson. I work with Mr. Ellsworth directly. He wanted me to oversee your transaction personally." Naomi's brows lifted slightly. "Is there a reason for that?" Allison's smile remained steady, but there was something sharp in her eyes. "We like to make sure all of our clients receive the best service." Naomi wasn't buying it. "Right," she said slowly. "And does that mean my offer is officially being submitted today?" Allison nodded. We're preparing the paperwork as we speak. However, she paused, tilting her head slightly. We'll need to verify a few things before proceeding. Naomi folded her arms. Like what? Allison kept her polite smile in place. Well, given the price point of this home, our firm has a thorough vetting process. We'll need to run additional financial checks, confirm the source of your funds, and ensure that you meet all of the community's requirements. Naomi felt her stomach tighten. She had purchased property before. She knew what was standard and what wasn't. And this was not standard. She inhaled deeply, keeping her voice even. I wasn't aware that there were additional requirements for this community. Oh, it's nothing out of the ordinary, Allison said breezily. We just like to ensure that all buyers fit within the neighborhood's expectations. It's a very particular community, you understand. There it was again, that coded language. Naomi didn't let her expression falter. Then I'd like to see those requirements in writing. Allison hesitated just a fraction too long before responding. Of course, I'll have those sent over this afternoon. Naomi nodded. Great. In the meantime, I'd like to proceed with my offer as planned. Allison's smile thinned, but she gave a curt nod. I'll have everything finalized shortly. Naomi turned and walked out of the office, her pulse steady but her mind racing. They were still trying to keep her out, and now they were getting creative. Back at her apartment, Naomi sat at the dining table, scanning the document Allison had sent over. It was full of vague terms. Preserving the character of the community, ensuring harmony among residents, maintaining the integrity of the development. Nowhere did it explicitly state that buyers had to meet a certain racial or socioeconomic profile, but Naomi knew exactly what they were implying. She picked up her phone and called Sam. They're trying to filter me out with a vetting process, she said the moment he answered. Sam let out a low whistle. They're not even being subtle anymore, huh? Nope, Naomi muttered. So what's the plan? Naomi exhaled, staring at the words on the page. I play by their rules, she said. For now. Because if they thought they could quietly push her out, they were about to learn just how persistent she could be. Naomi sat in the corner of a quiet cafe, her laptop open in front of her as she carefully reviewed the vetting process documents from Ellsworth Realty. The wording was slippery, filled with enough legal jargon to sound legitimate, but vague enough to be used as a gatekeeping tool. She had encountered plenty of barriers in her career, moments where people in power had found subtle ways to remind her that she wasn't supposed to belong. But she had always found a way through, and she was about to do it again. The chair across from her scraped against the floor as Sam sat down, dropping a folder onto the table. He had the look of a man who had already seen through the game and was enjoying the thought of watching it fall apart. I did some digging, he said, flipping open the folder. Turns out this so-called vetting process isn't being applied to every buyer, just to you. Naomi raised an eyebrow. I'm shocked, Sam smirked. The funny thing is, this kind of thing used to be legal decades ago, but now they know they can't come right out and say it, so they use language like preserving the character of the community. Naomi nodded slowly, running her finger along the rim of her coffee cup. And what happens if I don't pass their vetting? Sam leaned back. They'll either delay the process until another buyer swoops in, or they'll find a technicality to reject you outright. Naomi closed her laptop and exhaled. Then I guess we don't give them a reason to reject me. Sam tilted his head. And how do you plan to do that? Naomi's lips curved into a small smile. By making it impossible for them to justify anything they're doing. That afternoon, Naomi arrived at Ellsworth Realty, her paperwork in hand. She had spent the morning meticulously preparing, ensuring that every financial document, every bank statement, and every proof of assets was flawless. Allison Grayson greeted her with the same carefully controlled smile. Miss Carter, she said smoothly, I trust you received the documents. I did, Naomi said, setting a neat stack of folders onto the desk. And I have everything you requested. Allison glanced at the stack as if she hadn't expected Naomi to actually follow through. That's wonderful. Of course, our review process is very thorough. It may take some time, Naomi smiled. That's fine. I have time. Allison hesitated, as if she had hoped Naomi would be discouraged. Then recovering, she took the documents and offered another polite nod. We'll be in touch soon. Naomi turned to leave, but then paused at the door. Oh, and Allison? The woman looked up. I assume the same vetting process applies to all buyers? Allison's expression didn't falter. Of course, Naomi nodded. Great. Then I'll expect transparency on how my application is handled compared to others. For the first time, Naomi saw a flicker of uncertainty in Allison's eyes. She walked out without waiting for a response. That evening, Naomi sat on her balcony, the cool ocean breeze brushing against her skin. Sam had stopped by, leaning against the railing with a satisfied look on his face. You rattled them, he said, taking a sip from his beer. Naomi smirked. Good. Sam glanced at her. You think they'll still try something? Naomi exhaled. Probably, but at least now they know I'm watching. She leaned back in her chair, looking out at the waves crashing against the shore. This wasn't just about buying a house anymore. This was about proving that she had every right to be here, and she wasn't backing down. Naomi sat in her apartment, the dim glow of her desk lamp casting long shadows across the room. The paperwork had been submitted, and now all she could do was wait. It was a familiar kind of waiting, the kind where she knew she had done everything right but still had to brace herself for the possibility of being denied for reasons that had nothing to do with her qualifications. Her phone buzzed. Sam. She picked up, pressing the phone to her ear. Tell me you have good news. Sam chuckled. I wish, but I do have news. Naomi sighed. That doesn't sound promising. It's what we expected, Sam said. I made a few calls, and from what I can tell, your application hasn't moved an inch. It's been under review for longer than it should be. Naomi clenched her jaw. They're stalling. Bingo, Sam confirmed. They're either hoping you'll get frustrated and walk away, or waiting for someone else to swoop in and take the property. Naomi leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. I'm not going anywhere. I didn't think you would, Sam said, amusement in his voice. But we need to put some pressure on them. If they're playing this game, we need to make sure they know you're not just sitting around waiting for permission. Naomi drummed her fingers on the desk. You're thinking media? Sam hesitated. Not yet, that's the nuclear option. But we can make noise in other ways. Naomi nodded to herself. All right, let's get to work. The next morning, Naomi walked into Ellsworth Realty, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The receptionist looked up, momentarily startled. Ms. Carter, she said quickly, do you have an appointment? I don't, Naomi replied, offering a polite smile. But I was hoping to get an update on my application. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably. I believe it's still in review. Naomi tilted her head. That's interesting. I was under the impression that similar applications typically take no more than 48 hours to process. The woman swallowed. Well, I can check again. Please do, Naomi said smoothly. As the receptionist picked up the phone, Naomi glanced across the office and spotted Allison Grayson standing near the glass conference rooms. Their eyes met, and Naomi saw the flicker of irritation cross Allison's face before she composed herself and walked over. Ms. Carter, Allison said, her voice laced with forced warmth. I didn't realize you'd be stopping by. Naomi smiled. I figured I'd check in, since it's been a few days and I haven't heard anything. Allison nodded, folding her hands in front of her. Yes, well, as I mentioned, we have a thorough review process. Naomi didn't break eye contact. I understand, and I also understand that review processes have standard timelines, so I'd love to know why mine is taking longer than expected. A beat of silence. Then Allison offered another professional smile. I'll personally follow up on it today. Naomi held her gaze. I appreciate that. That evening, Naomi met Sam at their usual cafe, both of them watching the sunset over the Pacific. You shook them up, Sam said, stirring his coffee. They're running out of ways to stall, Naomi replied. Sam studied her. And what happens when they try to block you outright? Naomi exhaled, letting the salty air fill her lungs. Then we make sure they regret it. She wasn't just here to fight for herself anymore. She was here to make sure no one else had to fight the same battle. Naomi sat in her car outside Ellsworth Realty, gripping the steering wheel as she replayed the conversation with Allison in her head. It was clear now. They weren't just stalling. They were searching for a way to deny her without making it look like discrimination. She wasn't going to let that happen. Her phone rang, breaking her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. Sam, she answered, putting him on speaker. Tell me you have something. I do, he said, and you're gonna love this. I just got off the phone with one of my contacts in real estate law. Turns out there's a legal loophole we can use against them. Naomi perked up. I'm listening. Sam cleared his throat. California has strict anti-discrimination housing laws. If we can prove they're applying this so-called vetting process selectively, we can file a formal complaint. Naomi's mind raced. So we need proof that other buyers aren't being put through the same hoops? Exactly, Sam confirmed. And I think I know how we can get it. The next day, Naomi and Sam executed their plan. Sam had arranged for a colleague, a white client with similar financial standing to Naomi, to inquire about the same property. His application was submitted through a different agent. Within hours, his approval went through with no extra vetting, no delays, and no unnecessary questioning. Naomi had her proof. She sat at her kitchen table that evening, staring at the email from Sam's contact. There it was, in black and white. One buyer fast-tracked, another stalled and scrutinized. Her jaw tightened. They had underestimated her. Naomi forwarded the email to Sam with a simple message. Let's turn up the heat. The following morning, Naomi arrived at Ellsworth Realty unannounced. She walked straight to the front desk, her presence commanding enough that the receptionist stiffened. I'd like to speak to Mr. Ellsworth, she said. The receptionist hesitated. He's not in the office today. Naomi didn't blink. Then I'll speak to whoever is in charge. The tension in the room grew as Allison Grayson appeared, her lips pressing into a thin line. Ms. Carter, Allison said, her voice tight. I wasn't expecting you. Naomi smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. I bet you weren't. She pulled out her phone, opened the email from Sam's contact, and turned the screen toward Allison. You want to explain why one buyer had their approval processed in less than a day, while I've been waiting for almost a week? Allison's face remained neutral, but Naomi caught the flicker of panic in her eyes. Our process is case by case, Allison said smoothly. Naomi tilted her head. Is that right? Because it sure looks like the case-by-case process only applies to me. Allison exhaled, glancing around as if hoping someone would intervene. But Naomi wasn't going to let her escape this. So here's how this is going to go, Naomi continued. You're going to process my application today, without any further delays. And if you don't, I'll be filing a formal complaint with the California Department of Fair Housing. Allison swallowed hard. Naomi leaned in slightly. And just so we're clear, I have a lawyer ready to review this entire process. So if you want to explain to a judge why my offer was delayed while another buyer sailed through, be my guest. Silence stretched between them. Then finally, Allison forced a smile. There's no need for that, Ms. Carter. I'll make sure your application is expedited. Naomi straightened, nodding. That's what I thought. She turned and walked out, her heart pounding, but her steps steady. Sam was waiting outside by her car, arms crossed. That looked intense, Naomi exhaled. They got the message, Sam smirked. Think they'll actually process it. Naomi opened her car door, pausing. If they don't, we make sure the whole city knows about it. She wasn't just here to buy a house anymore. She was here to make sure no one else had to fight this fight alone. Naomi sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone, waiting for the inevitable email. After the confrontation at Ellsworth Realty, she knew they would have to make a move. The only question was whether they would approve her application or find a new way to block her. The email arrived at exactly 10:27 a.m. Subject: Your application status, urgent update. Her stomach tightened as she opened it. Dear Ms. Carter, after careful review, we regret to inform you that the seller has decided to move forward with another buyer. We appreciate your interest in the property and would be happy to assist you in finding alternative options. Sincerely, Allison Grayson, Ellsworth Realty. Naomi's grip on her phone tightened. They had done exactly what she expected. Instead of outright denying her, they had conveniently found another buyer. It was a classic move, one designed to keep their hands clean while still achieving the same outcome. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Sam. They pulled the plug, she said as soon as she answered. Sam cursed under his breath. They really think they can just push you out like that? Naomi took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. They didn't deny me. They just found another buyer. Sam scoffed. Right, because that doesn't sound shady at all. Naomi exhaled. We need to prove that this wasn't a legitimate decision. We need to find out who this other buyer is. Sam was quiet for a moment. I might have a way to do that. Later that evening, Naomi met Sam at a small bar tucked away in Santa Monica. It was quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place where conversations stayed private. Sam slid into the booth across from her, a knowing glint in his eye. You're going to love this, he said, pulling out his phone. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You found something? Oh, I found something. He turned the screen toward her, showing a real estate database. I pulled some strings and got access to the most recent property transactions under Ellsworth Realty. Naomi's pulse quickened. And, Sam smirked, the house isn't under contract. No new buyer, no pending sale, nothing. Naomi leaned back, gripping the edge of the table. So they lied. Sam nodded. They never had another buyer. They just didn't want to sell to you. Naomi inhaled slowly, trying to push down the anger bubbling inside her. Then they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The next morning, Naomi walked into Ellsworth Realty with a calm, measured pace. Heads turned as she strode through the office, but she ignored them, heading straight for Allison Grayson's office. She didn't bother knocking. Allison looked up, startled. Ms. Carter! Naomi shut the door behind her. You lied! Allison's expression barely flickered. I beg your pardon? Naomi pulled out her phone and placed it on Allison's desk, the real estate database still glowing on the screen. There is no other buyer. The house isn't under contract, which means you and your firm deliberately misled me. Allison sat back, folding her hands. Ms. Carter, I assure you, our office follows strict ethical guidelines. Cut the act, Naomi interrupted, her voice firm but controlled. I'm giving you one chance. Process my offer today, or I'll make sure every major news outlet in this city knows exactly what you did. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Allison's face. Naomi pressed forward. You're hoping I'll just walk away, but I won't. So either you do the right thing now, or you deal with a PR nightmare later. Silence stretched between them. Then finally Allison's jaw tightened. I'll speak with Mr. Ellsworth. Naomi nodded. Good. You do that. She turned on her heel and walked out, her heart pounding, but her resolve steady. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about making sure they never did this to anyone else again. Naomi sat on the patio of a small cafe near the beach, watching the waves roll in as she stirred her coffee. The confrontation at Ellsworth Realty had left her feeling both victorious and drained. She had forced Allison's hand, but she wasn't naive. This wasn't over yet. Her phone rang. Sam, she answered immediately. Tell me you have something. You're not going to like it, he said. Naomi braced herself. What now? They're doubling down, Sam said. Ellsworth Realty just updated the listing. The house is now under contract. Naomi's grip on her coffee cup tightened. With who? That's the thing. There's no record of a new buyer in the county system yet, Sam explained, which means they probably fabricated an offer just to block you. Naomi exhaled, forcing herself to stay calm. They're really willing to go this far. Looks like it, Sam said. But here's where it gets interesting. I spoke to a real estate attorney, and what they're doing? It's legally questionable at best. If they faked an offer to get rid of you, that's grounds for a lawsuit. Naomi took a slow sip of her coffee, thinking. So, we need proof. Exactly, Sam said. If we can prove they fabricated a competing buyer, they're screwed. Naomi nodded, already forming a plan. Then let's find out just how deep this goes. That afternoon, Naomi parked outside Ellsworth Realty again. This time, she wasn't walking in blind. She had done her homework. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the pristine marble floors. The receptionist glanced up, her smile tight. Ms. Carter, she said, how can I help you? I'd like to speak to Mr. Ellsworth, Naomi said smoothly. The receptionist hesitated. He's in a meeting. Then I'll wait, Naomi said, taking a seat in the lobby. The woman looked flustered, but didn't argue. Naomi crossed her legs, pulled out her phone, and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, the glass doors at the far end of the office swung open, and Harold Ellsworth himself stepped out. He was an older man, tall and well-groomed, his silver hair neatly combed back. His presence alone carried an air of authority. His eyes landed on Naomi, and his smile was polite but guarded. "Ms. Carter, I understand you've been requesting to see me." Naomi stood, offering her hand. "I have. I wanted to discuss the recent changes regarding the Malibu Shores property." Ellsworth shook her hand briefly before gesturing toward his office. "Please, come in." Inside his office, Naomi sat across from Ellsworth, watching as he settled behind his sleek mahogany desk. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "I know there is no legitimate buyer under contract for that house." Ellsworth didn't react. "I assure you, our firm operates with the utmost integrity." Naomi smiled tightly. "Then you won't mind showing me proof of the pending contract." A flicker of something passed across his face, gone in an instant. "I'm afraid that's confidential information," he said smoothly. Naomi leaned forward. "Not if you're using it to block a legitimate offer. If there is no actual contract, you're engaging in fraudulent business practices, and I'm prepared to take this to the Fair Housing Commission." Ellsworth's jaw tightened ever so slightly. "I admire your persistence, Ms. Carter," he said finally, "but let me offer you a different perspective. There are many beautiful homes in Malibu. Perhaps it would be in everyone's best interest if we helped you find something more suitable." Naomi inhaled deeply, forcing herself to remain composed. "And by more suitable, you mean a home in a different neighborhood?" Ellsworth didn't respond, but his silence was answer enough. Naomi nodded, standing. "I see. Then I suppose I have my answer." Ellsworth watched her carefully. "I do hope we can resolve this amicably, Ms. Carter." Naomi met his gaze, her voice steady. "So do I." She turned and walked out of the office, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger, and now she knew exactly what she needed to do. Naomi sat in her living room, her laptop open in front of her as she stared at the screen. The email draft was ready to go. A formal complaint to the California Department of Fair Housing, outlining every unethical tactic Ellsworth Realty had used to stall, manipulate, and ultimately deny her a fair chance at purchasing the Malibu Shores home. Her cursor hovered over the send button. This was it, the point of no return. She took a deep breath and clicked send. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Sam. "It's done," she said before he could speak. There was a brief pause before Sam let out a low whistle. "Damn, you're really going for it." "I don't have a choice," Naomi said. "Ellsworth made it clear they're not backing down. Neither am I." Sam exhaled. "Well then, let's make some noise." The next morning, Naomi woke to a flood of notifications on her phone. Emails, missed calls, and one name in particular stood out. A reporter from the Los Angeles Tribune. She clicked on the email. Subject: Inquiry regarding potential housing discrimination case. "Dear Ms. Carter, I came across information regarding your recent attempt to purchase a home in Malibu Shore and would love the opportunity to speak with you. We've received anonymous tips about discriminatory practices in high-end real estate, and your case could be an important piece of a larger investigation. If you're open to it, I'd love to set up a call at your earliest convenience. Best, Rachel Holt, investigative reporter, the Los Angeles Tribune." Naomi's pulse quickened. This was bigger than she thought. She immediately forwarded the email to Sam with a short message. "They wanted to play dirty? Now it's my turn." Later that afternoon, Naomi sat across from Rachel Holt in a quiet, upscale cafe in Santa Monica. Rachel was sharp, focused, her notebook open as she listened intently. "You said you've received anonymous tips about similar cases?" Naomi asked, stirring her tea. Rachel nodded. "Yes. You're not the first person to be quietly pushed out of a high-end property in the city, but most cases never make it this far because buyers either give up or settle for another home. Your case is different because you're fighting back, and you have proof." Naomi exhaled. "So what happens next?" Rachel smiled slightly. "That depends. Are you ready to take this public?" Naomi hesitated for only a second before she nodded. "I am." Rachel closed her notebook. "Then let's expose them." That evening, Naomi sat in her apartment, watching the city lights flicker through her window. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Sam, hope you're ready. The Tribune article drops tomorrow." Naomi exhaled slowly. This wasn't just about a house anymore. By tomorrow, the entire city would know what Ellsworth Realty had done, and there would be no turning back. Naomi sat at her kitchen table, her laptop open to the Los Angeles Tribune website. The article was live. Luxury real estate or gatekeeping? Allegations of discrimination at Ellsworth Realty. By Rachel Holt, investigative reporter. The first few paragraphs summarized Naomi's experience, how she had been given unnecessary vetting procedures, misled about the property's availability, and ultimately shut out under the false pretense of another buyer. Then came the bombshell. Multiple sources have come forward with similar allegations against Ellsworth Realty, citing repeated patterns of exclusion, targeting minority buyers in affluent neighborhoods. Records obtained by the Tribune indicate inconsistencies in how applications were processed, raising questions about potential fair housing violations. Naomi's phone started buzzing almost immediately. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "This is Naomi Carter." "Ms. Carter," a measured voice said, "this is Harold Ellsworth. I believe we need to talk." 1 hour later, Naomi sat in a sleek conference room at Ellsworth Realty's headquarters. Across from her, Harold Ellsworth sat with his hands folded neatly on the table. To his right, Allison Grayson sat stiffly, clearly unhappy about this meeting. "I'll get straight to the point," Ellsworth said, his voice smooth. "This article has caused quite a stir. I'd like to resolve this matter privately." Naomi met his gaze, unimpressed. "You mean you want me to drop it?" Ellsworth exhaled through his nose. "I think we can come to a mutually beneficial agreement." Allison pushed a folder across the table. "We're prepared to fast-track your offer. No further delays. The house is yours if you agree to issue a statement that clears up any misunderstandings." Naomi tilted her head. "So let me get this straight. You're offering me the house I should have been able to buy in the first place, but only if I help clean up your PR nightmare?" Ellsworth's jaw tightened. "The allegations in the Tribune are damaging, not just to this firm, but to the entire community. We'd prefer to move forward without prolonged conflict." Naomi sat back in her chair, tapping a finger against the table. She had expected this, a last-ditch effort to save face. She turned to Allison. "And what about the other buyers you did this to? Do they get their homes too? Or just me, because my story got attention?" Allison's expression didn't change, but she said nothing. Ellsworth cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, I believe we can all agree that you've made your point." Naomi smiled faintly. "Not yet." Back outside, Sam was waiting by her car. "So how did the villains react?" "They offered me the house," Naomi said. Sam arched a brow. "And," Naomi exhaled, "and I told them I'd think about it." Sam laughed. "Oh, you're going to make them sweat." Naomi smirked. "Damn right I am." She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every person they had ever tried to shut out. And this battle wasn't over yet. Naomi sat on the balcony of her apartment, the city lights twinkling below as the ocean breeze brushed against her skin. She had spent years making quick decisions, deciding how to handle mid-air emergencies, calming panicked passengers, navigating high-pressure situations at 35,000 feet. But this required more than quick thinking. Her phone buzzed beside her. "Sam," she answered, still staring at the horizon. "You're quiet," he noted. "I'm thinking," Naomi admitted. "They handed me exactly what I wanted, but it doesn't sit right." Sam sighed. "Because it's not about the house anymore." Naomi nodded. "If I take it and walk away, they get to sweep everything under the rug. They get to pretend this never happened. And if you don't take it, then they know they picked the wrong woman to mess with." There was silence on the line. Then Sam chuckled. "Well, I'd pay good money to see the look on Ellsworth's face when you turn him down." Naomi smirked. "You won't have to pay a thing. You'll be there." The next morning, Naomi walked into Ellsworth Realty with the same confidence she had when she first set foot in their offices. Allison was waiting for her in the lobby, her posture rigid. "Mr. Ellsworth is expecting you." Naomi followed her into the same sleek conference room where they had tried to buy her silence. Ellsworth sat at the head of the table, expression carefully neutral. "Ms. Carter," he greeted, "have you come to a decision?" Naomi placed both hands on the table, meeting his gaze directly. I have, she said. I'm not taking your offer. Ellsworth's face barely flickered, but she saw the subtle shift in his posture, the tightness in his jaw, the way his fingers curled against the table. Allison, on the other hand, looked outright stunned. You're declining the property? Ellsworth asked, his voice steady but laced with controlled irritation. I'm declining the strings attached, Naomi corrected. I won't clear your name in exchange for something I should have had access to in the first place. Ellsworth exhaled through his nose. And what do you intend to do instead? Naomi smiled faintly. I intend to make sure no one else has to go through this. For the first time, Ellsworth looked genuinely uneasy. You're making a mistake, he said carefully. Naomi tilted her head. So were you. She turned and walked out without another word. Back outside, Sam leaned against her car, grinning as she approached. I take it they weren't thrilled, he asked. Oh, they were livid, Naomi said, unlocking her door. Which means I did the right thing. Sam let out a low whistle. So what now? Naomi slid into the driver's seat, adjusting her sunglasses. Now, she said, starting the engine, we take this fight further. She had never been afraid of turbulence before, and she wasn't about to start now. Naomi sat across from Rachel Holt at a bustling downtown coffee shop, the faint hum of conversation filling the space between them. The Los Angeles Tribune article had already made waves, but Naomi wasn't done yet. Rachel flipped open her notebook. I have to say, most people would have taken the house and walked away. Naomi stirred her tea slowly. Most people don't have the luxury of fighting battles like this. But I do, and I intend to use it. Rachel nodded, impressed. So what's your next move? Naomi exhaled. I want more stories out there. I want other buyers to come forward. If Ellsworth has been doing this for years, they shouldn't just get to make one offer to shut me up and move on. Rachel smirked. Funny you say that. After your article went live, I started getting emails. She pulled out her phone and slid it across the table. Naomi scanned the screen, her pulse quickening. Multiple buyers, different neighborhoods, different years, all claiming the same pattern: excessive vetting, sudden delays, fake competing offers. Rachel leaned forward. This isn't just a bad agent or one isolated case. This is a systemic practice. Naomi nodded. Which means it's time to go bigger. Rachel tapped her pen against her notebook. How big are we talking? Naomi met her gaze. Lawsuit big. That evening, Naomi met Sam at their usual spot, a rooftop bar overlooking the city. He had a beer in hand, watching the lights of Los Angeles stretch out beneath them. So, he said as she sat down, word on the street is you're about to become a legal nightmare for Ellsworth Realty. Naomi chuckled. Word travels fast. Sam took a sip. You serious about this lawsuit? Completely, Naomi said. The Fair Housing Act is on my side. They think they can keep getting away with this because no one fights back. Sam tilted his head. And you? Naomi smirked. I don't walk away. Sam raised his glass. To making their worst fears come true. Naomi clinked her glass against his. She wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Naomi stood outside a glass-walled law office in downtown Los Angeles, staring up at the towering building. This was the moment where everything shifted, from a personal fight to a legal battle that could set a precedent. She adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped inside. Inside a spacious conference room, Naomi sat across from Alicia Bennett, a high-profile civil rights attorney. Alicia was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, and known for taking on discrimination cases that corporations thought they could brush under the rug. She flipped through the file Naomi had provided, her expression unreadable. You have a case, Alicia finally said, setting the papers down. Naomi exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders. The pattern is clear, Alicia continued. Ellsworth Realty has been using arbitrary vetting processes to keep minority buyers out of certain communities while fast-tracking white buyers. That's a direct violation of the Fair Housing Act. Naomi nodded. So what's the next step? Alicia steepled her fingers. We file, but we also make noise. We get other buyers to come forward, and we push this into the public eye. They won't just be fighting you. They'll be fighting every single person they've ever shut out. Naomi felt a fire ignite in her chest. Then let's do it. The news hit within days. Class action lawsuit filed against Ellsworth Realty for housing discrimination. The story exploded. Other buyers, dozens of them, came forward with their own experiences. The state launched an investigation. And Ellsworth Realty, they scrambled. Days later, Naomi received an unexpected call. Harold Ellsworth. She let the phone ring twice before answering. Ms. Carter, his voice was calm, but the tension was unmistakable. I believe we need to talk. Naomi smiled, leaning back in her chair. I'm listening. Ellsworth cleared his throat. I'd like to discuss a settlement. Naomi arched a brow. A settlement? Ellsworth exhaled. I think we can come to a resolution that benefits both parties. Naomi's smile didn't fade. The problem, Mr. Ellsworth, is that this isn't just about me anymore. A long pause. I see, he finally said. I don't think you do, Naomi replied. But you will. She ended the call. Sam, who had been sitting across from her, grinned. So, what now? Naomi smirked. Now? We let them burn. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was changing the game. A month had passed since Naomi had filed the lawsuit, and the ripple effects had been larger than she ever expected. Ellsworth Realty was no longer just a real estate firm, it was a scandal. The California Department of Fair Housing had launched a full-scale investigation, pulling transaction records, interviewing past buyers, and uncovering years of discriminatory practices that had been quietly swept under the rug. More buyers had come forward, more stories had been told, and now Naomi was watching it all unfold from the front row. She sat at her kitchen table scrolling through news articles. State investigation expands into high-end real estate discrimination. Ellsworth Realty faces class action lawsuit after allegations of racial bias. Luxury housing market under scrutiny after damning reports. Her phone buzzed. Sam. Tell me you're watching the news, he said, his voice full of amusement. Naomi smirked. I am. They're scrambling. Scrambling is an understatement, Sam said. Ellsworth just announced they're firing Ethan Blake, and Allison Grayson resigned this morning. Naomi raised her eyebrows. So they're cutting off the weak links. Yup, trying to save the company, Sam said. But it's too late. Their entire business model is getting torn apart. Naomi leaned back, exhaling slowly. Good. A week later, Naomi received an official email from Ellsworth Realty's legal team. They wanted to settle. She met with Alicia Bennett at her law office. The paperwork spread across the desk between them. They're offering financial compensation, Alicia said, scanning the documents. And they're proposing internal reforms, mandatory diversity training, policy revisions, third-party oversight. Naomi tapped a finger against the table. Sounds like they're trying to fix the PR damage. Alicia smirked. Oh, definitely. But the changes would be real, legally enforceable, and it sets a precedent for the industry. Naomi inhaled deeply. So this doesn't just help me, it helps the next person. Alicia nodded. Exactly. Naomi didn't hesitate. Then we take it. 2 weeks later, Naomi stood in front of a row of microphones. The press gathered for a statement. She looked out at the reporters, at the cameras, at the people waiting to hear what she had to say. This case was never just about a house, she said, her voice steady. It was about fairness. It was about making sure that no one, no matter their background, can be quietly pushed out of opportunities they have every right to pursue. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Today, Ellsworth Realty is being held accountable. And tomorrow, we keep fighting to make sure this never happens again. The cameras flashed. The headlines followed. And just like that, Naomi Carter had changed the game forever. Naomi Carter's fight wasn't just about a house. It was about standing up to a system designed to shut people like her out. She refused to walk away, and because of that, she didn't just change her own fate. She changed the game for others too. This story is a reminder that power isn't just about money or connections. Sometimes it's about knowing your worth and refusing to be silent. What do you think? Should Naomi have taken the house and walked away? Or did she make the right call by exposing the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more real, gripping stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We've got more stories coming your way. You won't want to miss them.